Have you ever met someone who just seems completely unflappable? You know the type. Perfect confidence, total control, seems to have an answer for everything. Well, according to Robert Greene's pretty controversial Law 33, that's all just a mask. See, this law argues that every single person, no matter how strong their fortress is, has a secret crack in the wall, a gap in their armor. Greene gives this vulnerability a pretty intense name, the thumbscrew. It's a pretty provocative thought, isn't it? This law suggests that if you start looking closely at the people around you, your boss, your colleagues, maybe even your friends, you can start to see these subtle hints, these hidden levers, an insecurity over here, an unmet need over there. And look, this isn't about judging them. It's about understanding human nature. And according to Greene, understanding these levers, well, that's the key to some serious influence. So in this explainer, we're going to do a deep dive. First up, we'll get a really clear definition of this unspoken weakness. Then, we're going to open up a strategic toolkit for how you can spot it. After that, we'll journey back in time to see it used in some major historical power plays. We'll unpack the psychology of why it's so powerful, and, this is critical, we'll look at the very real dangers of when this law backfires.
All right, so first things first, before you can even think about finding a weakness, you've got to understand exactly what it is you're looking for. This isn't just about some simple flaw, it's something way deeper, something much more fundamental to who a person is.
And here's where we get really specific. A thumbscrew isn't just something a person is bad at. No, it's a profound emotional pressure point. Think of it like a desperate need for validation, or maybe an irrational fear that secretly guides all their decisions, or even a hidden pleasure they just can't say no to. And the most powerful part of this whole idea, Greene says this isn't some rare trait, it's a universal part of being human.
This quote from Freud just perfectly nails the psychology behind it. What he's really getting at is that our deepest secrets, our biggest insecurities, they always find a way to the surface. We leak them. People just can't help but betray their vulnerabilities through tiny unconscious gestures or weird patterns in their speech or sudden emotional outbursts. The secret isn't reading minds, it's learning to read the signs.
Okay, so we get the what. Now let's get to the how. And this isn't about being manipulative in some crude way. It's about becoming a master observer. Greene lays out this whole strategic toolkit for uncovering these hidden vulnerabilities, for learning to see what everyone else misses.
So here are the 6 core strategies, everything from noticing body language to exploiting emotions. Now, we're not going to have time to go through every single one, but we are going to zero in on 3 of the most powerful. But notice the common thread here. They all revolve around looking past the surface and paying attention to the hidden patterns in how people behave. Now this one is deep. Greene suggests that a lot of powerful adults are secretly being driven by an emotional script that was written way back in their childhood, a need that was never met, maybe for security or praise or just simple attention. It doesn't just vanish, it gets buried, and it continues to pull the strings. If you can spot that childhood need in an adult and then offer to fill it, you gain incredible leverage because you're tapping into one of the oldest, most powerful desires they'll ever have.
You have to always look for the contrast. There's actually a psychological term for this, reaction formation. It's when someone feels an unacceptable desire, so they act in the exact opposite way to hide it. The loudest guy in the room, he's often covering up some deep insecurity. The person who's hypercritical and moralistic, they might be wrestling with their own secret desires. The main point is this: what people work the hardest to show you is often a huge clue to what they're desperately trying to hide.
Now, this strategy takes that same idea and applies it to groups. In any power structure, whether it's a royal court or just your corporate office, don't just focus on the person with the fancy title. Instead, look for the person the leader really depends on, that trusted advisor, the influential spouse, the indispensable assistant. That person often holds the real key, and by influencing them, you can influence the entire organization.
All right, so theory is one thing, right? But let's see how these strategies have literally shaped history. These aren't just abstract ideas. They have been used to build empires, win wars, and topple regimes.
Let's kick things off with Otto von Bismarck and King William I of Prussia. You couldn't find 2 more different people. On one hand, you have the king, who is chronically timid, paralyzed by indecision, constantly getting pushed around by his parliament. Then you have Bismarck, his minister, who is the complete opposite, bold, decisive, totally fearless. But Bismarck saw something that others missed. Under all that fear, the king was secretly ashamed of his own weakness and had this desperate, hidden longing to be seen as a glorious, powerful monarch.
This is the exact moment Bismarck turned the thumbscrew. The king was right on the verge of giving in to Parliament. Bismarck didn't argue with logic, he went straight for the king's deepest insecurity.
He reframed the whole choice, not as some political squabble, but as a test of courage versus cowardice, of a glorious death versus a shameful life. By playing directly on the king's fear of looking weak, he transformed this timid man into a strong ruler. And in doing so, he basically laid the foundation for the entire German Empire.
Now, for a completely different kind of power play. The legendary con man Victor Lustig was an absolute genius at finding the thumbscrew. He targeted this wealthy banker who, despite having all the money in the world, was just eaten alive by insecurity. He wanted more than just wealth. He craved that feeling of being special, of being smart, of being part of some exclusive inner circle. See, Lustig understood a crucial lesson. He wasn't just selling a scam. He was selling a solution to the banker's deepest emotional needs. The money machine he pitched was, let's be honest, completely absurd. But the banker wanted to believe it. And why? Because it promised to satisfy his vanity and his greed at the same time, making him feel richer and smarter than everyone else. Lustig didn't just exploit his greed. He exploited the man's desperate need to feel superior. And for our final case, Cardinal Richelieu in the French court. While literally everyone else was focused on the young king, Louis XIII, Richelieu looked deeper. He saw that the true center of influence was actually the king's mother, Marie de Médicis. She was insecure, she was emotional, she was easily swayed. Richelieu identified her as the weak link in the whole chain of power. By gaining her trust and influencing her, he effectively controlled the king and, by extension, the entire French state.
So, after hearing these incredible stories from history, the question you have to ask is, why? Why is this law so consistently effective? What is it about our shared human psychology that leaves us so vulnerable to this kind of influence?
Well, the psychology is really rooted in these fundamental human drivers. We're all governed by forces we often try to hide, even from ourselves. It could be a deep-seated insecurity from our childhood, like that helpless child we talked about, or an overwhelming emotion like greed or vanity. These aren't just quirks, they're the hidden currents that are truly steering our lives.
This metaphor of the groove is absolutely key. Greene argues that an emotional void creates this predictable pattern of behavior. It's like a well-worn path in the mind. People will go back again and again to anything that promises to fill that emptiness. If you can identify that void, that constant searching, you can essentially predict and therefore influence their next move.
But before you get any ideas, there is a massive warning that comes with this law. In fact, Greene considers it one of the most dangerous laws in the entire book. Using it without understanding the immense risks is just a recipe for absolute disaster.
This right here is the crucial point. When you apply the thumbscrew, you are tinkering with the most volatile, the most unpredictable parts of a person's psyche. When you press on an uncontrollable emotion, you risk creating an uncontrollable reaction. The person you're trying to influence can become erratic, vengeful, or completely unstable, and the whole situation can spiral far, far beyond your control.
I mean, think about it. If you turn a coward into a reckless warrior like Bismarck did, they might just charge right off a cliff and take you with them. If you play on someone's need for attention, you might discover it's a bottomless pit that you can never fill, and they just become a huge liability. The book's final warning is crystal clear. The goal here is strategic advantage, not creating chaos that you can't possibly manage.
And that leaves us with the final question to really think about. This law offers a key to immense influence, for sure, but it's a key that can also unlock Pandora's box. So, is mastering this skill a necessary tool for navigating a complex world? Or is it a dangerous game that ultimately just consumes the player? The power and the risk is yours to weigh.